Okay, ready to dive into a tough but really important topic: narcissistic abuse. We're going to try to figure out how to spot the red flags, like decode all the manipulation tactics, and, really understand what kind of impact it can have in the long run.
Yeah, it's a deep dive for sure. I mean, we're talking about behavior patterns that can seriously mess with your mental and physical health.
Yeah.
Your relationships, even your whole sense of self.
We hear the term all the time, but what does narcissistic abuse actually mean?
Well, you're not going to find it as like an official diagnosis in some medical textbook,
Yep.
but it's a term we use to describe the damage that happens because of these manipulation tactics that people with strong narcissistic tendencies use. And that impact, it's real, and it can last a really long time.
So how is this different from someone who just, got a big ego or is a little self-centered?
That's a really important point. I mean, everyone can be a little narcissistic sometimes, right? But with real narcissistic abuse, you see a consistent pattern of behavior. It's about controlling people, making them feel small, and taking advantage of them. It's way more than just being selfish.
Makes me think about the difference between like having some narcissistic tendencies and actually having narcissistic personality disorder, NPD.
Yeah, exactly. NPD is, well, it's complicated. It's a mental health condition where someone has a huge sense of self-importance, they need constant admiration, and they just don't get empathy. But I gotta say, not everyone with NPD is abusive.
So someone could have NPD and just choose not to be abusive.
Exactly. Just like with any personality trait, people can choose how they act. Having a diagnosis doesn't automatically mean someone's going to be abusive. It's a choice.
Which takes us to those manipulation tactics. Like, what are some of the common things someone who's being narcissistically abusive might do?
Think of it as their manipulation toolbox, right? One thing they might use is triangulation. That's when they pull in some third person just to back them up and stir up drama.
Oh, the classic divide and conquer.
Yep, that's it. Then you got gaslighting, which is all about twisting the truth and denying reality to make you doubt yourself. Like, are you even sane?
It's like arguing with a funhouse mirror, Everything's distorted and you start to question your own eyes.
Wow, that's a great way to put it. And then there's hoovering. That's when they try to pull you back in after you've, gotten away. They promise to change, they shower you with affection, but as soon as they think they got you, they go right back to their old tricks.
Like a vacuum cleaner, just sucking you back into the same messed up situation.
Exactly. And who could forget the silent treatment? Yeah, everyone needs space sometimes, but a narcissist, they use silence like a weapon. It's to punish you, control you, and make you feel all alone.
It's not about taking healthy space. It's about using silence to get what they want.
Right. Then there's scapegoating. You see that a lot in families. One person gets picked on and blamed for every little thing that goes wrong.
Like they need a human punching bag for all their own issues.
Totally. And then there's passive aggression, which is sneakier. It's when they're angry and hostile, but they do it indirectly, like sarcasm, backhanded compliments, or just messing things up for you on purpose.
They're trying to get their point across without actually saying it, which is like the most frustrating thing.
You get it. And similar to that is negging, where they give these backhanded compliments or little insults, all to make you feel less confident and like you need their approval even more.
Like death by 1,000 paper cuts to your self-esteem.
Exactly. And finally, we got smear campaigns. This is where they just go around trashing your reputation, making up lies and spreading rumors about you.
So it's not enough to control you. They got to control what everyone else thinks of you too.
Yep. It's all about protecting their image and their power, even if it means destroying yours in the process.
Catching these tactics early on is so important. But how do we do that when narcissistic abuse is often so subtle, especially at the beginning?
You're right. It's not always obvious. It's like that thing with the frog in the boiling water. The temperature goes up slowly, and by the time the frog realizes, it's too late.
Oh, wow. That's intense.
That's why we need to understand the love bombing phase. It happens a lot at the start of a relationship with a narcissist. It's this period of crazy affection, big gestures, constant attention, and tons of flattery. It can feel pretty amazing.
It can feel like a fairy tale, right? And that makes it even harder to see the red flags.
Exactly. That love bombing creates this illusion that you're super connected, so it's tough to see what's really going on. But even in all that attention, there are still some warning signs.
Like what? What should we watch out for, even during that honeymoon phase?
Pay attention to how you feel when you're with this person. If you're always second-guessing yourself, feeling unsure about what you think or feel because of how they're acting, that's a red flag.
So it's not just their actions, it's how those actions make you feel.
Exactly. Another thing is, if they're constantly putting themselves down, might seem harmless, but it's often a way to fish for compliments and make it all about them. They want you to build them back up.
Sneaky way to get attention, for sure. What else?
If you find yourself, needing to keep proof of your interactions, like taking screenshots of texts or keeping a journal because they're gaslighting you so much, that's a big red flag.
Like your gut's telling you something's wrong and you got to protect yourself.
You're right on the money. That need to document things, that's your intuition screaming at you. Listen to it. And if you find yourself having to write things down all the time because they just won't listen or have a real conversation, pay attention to that too.
Like they're shutting down any real communication, so you got to find other ways to be heard.
Right. And lastly, watch out for insults and jokes aimed at your insecurities. Even if they say it's all in good fun, it's a huge red flag. It shows they don't respect you and they're willing to tear you down.
It's like they get off on making you feel bad, even if they pretend it's a joke.
These are just some of the early signs, and remember, it's usually subtle and builds slowly. Trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. It can be tough setting those boundaries.
Especially when you're dealing with deep-rooted patterns of behavior.
Yeah, and that's where understanding what makes the narcissist tick is important.
I mean, they really thrive on control, on getting their way no matter what.
So you gotta be ready for them to push back, to try and manipulate you, to undermine those boundaries you're trying to set.
It's like a game of chess, almost. You gotta think ahead, have a strategy for their next move.
But here's the thing. You don't have to play their game.
Right. You get to choose how you respond, how much you engage, and when to just walk away.
And that actually brings us to something really important when dealing with a narcissist. Being ready to walk away if it gets too toxic, too dangerous.
That's way easier said than done, especially when there's emotions involved, maybe finances or even kids.
Absolutely. It's complicated. There's no easy answer.
But your safety, your well-being, that has to come first.
And there's help out there, like domestic violence hotlines, legal aid, support groups for survivors.
You don't have to go through this alone.
Let's change gears a little. Look at some bigger ideas about narcissism.
One thing I always found interesting is that whole narcissistic injury thing.
Yeah, that's a big one. It's key to understanding how these folks work.
So what is a narcissistic injury exactly?
Basically, it's anything that hurts their ego, anything that threatens that image they have of being superior, better than everyone.
So if you criticize them or point out their flaws, that could trigger it.
You got it.
And how do they usually react when that happens?
It depends, but a lot of times it's anger, rage, getting super defensive, denying everything, or even trying to get back at you.
Like they can't handle anything that doesn't fit their perfect picture of themselves.
Exactly. Their ego is so fragile, even a tiny little thing can set them off.
Makes you think about empathy, or the lack of it, when it comes to narcissists.
Yeah, that's crucial.
They have a real hard time understanding what other people are feeling. They just can't put themselves in someone else's shoes.
It's like they see the world through this warped lens, and all they can see is their own wants and needs.
They can't really connect with others on an emotional level because they're so wrapped up in their own little world.
And that lack of empathy, that's one of the big reasons why narcissistic abuse is so damaging.
It's like they can't even see the pain they're causing, or if they do, they just don't care.
And it leaves the people they hurt feeling, drained, like they don't matter, really messed up.
This reminds me, not all narcissists are the same, are they?
Nope, not at all. There's a whole spectrum, from kind of mild to really severe, even what they call malignant narcissism.
So you could have some narcissistic tendencies, but not be a full-blown narcissist.
Right. It's not like a yes or no thing. It's more of a sliding scale.
How can you tell if someone's just got a big ego, a bit self-centered, versus being a real pathological narcissist?
Empathy is a big clue.
So someone who's healthy in their narcissism, they can still understand other people's feelings, even if they do put their own needs first sometimes.
Exactly. They might think highly of themselves, but they can still connect with others on an emotional level.
But a pathological narcissist, they don't have that empathy. They see other people as tools to get what they want.
They need constant admiration, constant validation, and they'll use people to get it.
This is making me think about that supply thing people talk about with narcissists.
Yeah, narcissistic supply.
For people who don't know, can you explain what that is?
It's like the attention, the admiration, the validation, even the fear that narcissists need to feel good about themselves.
They got to have that constant stream of attention to prop up their fragile ego.
That's it. They're like emotional vampires sucking the energy out of everyone around them.
And where do they usually get this supply from?
everywhere. Romantic relationships, family, friends, coworkers, even strangers.
So anyone they come across could be a potential source of supply.
Yep, they're always scanning for people who will stroke their ego, tell them how great they are.
I'm thinking about social media, how that plays into all this.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Social media is all about likes and followers, and looking good online seems like a perfect breeding ground for narcissism.
You're telling me. It's like this huge buffet of attention and admiration all there for the taking. They can build this perfect online persona, get instant gratification from likes and comments.
And the more attention they get, the bigger their ego gets, so it just feeds the whole cycle.
It's a weird dynamic, that's for sure. Social media has definitely opened up new ways for this kind of behavior to flourish.
So what causes narcissism in the first place?
$1,000,000 question, and there's no easy answer.
But there are some theories out there.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. A lot of experts think it goes back to childhood, how kids are raised,
What kind of parenting styles could lead to narcissistic traits?
Well, both extremes, actually. Too much attention or not enough.
How does that work?
Like, if parents spoil their kids, give them everything they want without making them earn it, that can create a sense of entitlement. They start thinking they're better than everyone else.
Like they live in this bubble where they never have to face consequences.
Exactly. But on the flip side, if kids are neglected, their emotional needs aren't met, they don't get enough love and attention, that can also lead to narcissistic traits.
How so?
Well, in those cases, kids might develop this grandiose sense of self to try and make up for feeling inadequate, unloved.
Like they build this fake persona to protect themselves from the pain.
Right. They put up this wall of grandiosity, self-importance to hide their true self because it's too vulnerable.
So both extremes, too much or too little, can really mess with a kid's development.
Yeah, it shows how crucial those early years are in shaping who we become and how we relate to others.
Makes you wonder about genetics too. Does that play a role?
There's no, narcissism gene, but research suggests that certain personality traits, including narcissism, could have a genetic component.
So some people might be more prone to developing these tendencies because of their genes.
It's a possibility.
Nature and nurture, always a fascinating combo.
For sure, it's this mix of things that shape who we are and how we act.
Let's talk about the impact of narcissistic abuse on society as a whole.
It's a bigger problem than people realize. Goes way beyond just individual relationships.
How so?
Well, think about it. Narcissists, they often end up in positions of power. Business, politics, entertainment, you name it.
Yeah, I can see that. They're driven, they crave success, admiration, control.
But the thing is, their lack of empathy, their manipulative ways, their hunger for power, it can cause a lot of damage.
Like taking advantage of employees, manipulating coworkers, abusing their power for personal gain.
And it has this ripple effect, Erodes trust, creates division, makes people scared and insecure.
It's kind of scary to think about the impact it can have on a larger scale.
That's why it's so important to talk about it, to raise awareness, to help people recognize and deal with narcissistic behavior.
Education and prevention, that's key.
Absolutely. If we understand how this kind of abuse works, we can build a society that's more informed and empowered.
Where people can protect themselves and hold narcissists accountable.
And where we value empathy, compassion, respect for each other.
Instead of rewarding manipulation, exploitation, and that whole power at any cost mentality.
Well said.
Before we wrap up, there's one question I really want to address.
What's that?
What about the narcissists themselves?
Yeah, good question.
They're often painted as the bad guys, right? Heartless manipulators who are beyond hope.
And yeah, their actions can cause a lot of harm. We gotta remember, they're human beings too. They have their own stories, their own struggles.
So if a narcissist wants to change, what's the way forward?
It's possible, but it's tough.
What does it take?
They gotta really look inward, confront their flaws, and be willing to put in the work, like therapy.
Break down those walls of ego and defensiveness they've built up over their whole life.
And connect with their true self, the one that's buried under all that manipulation and ego.
Sounds like a long, hard journey.
It is. It takes a lot of courage and humility, being willing to let go of control.
But if they can do it, it could lead to a much better life.
Absolutely. One where they can have real connections with people, experience the world with empathy and compassion.
It's a journey worth taking, not just for them, but for everyone around them.
Brings us to healing, which is what we're going to talk about next.
Yeah, this has been heavy stuff. but really important to talk about.
It's true. And we got to remember, healing, it's a process, not like you just flip a switch.
Right, there's going to be good days and bad days. You take a step forward, then maybe a step back.
That's how it goes. But every step you take, you're getting closer to, being free, feeling whole again.
One thing that comes up a lot with narcissistic abuse is, like, forgiveness.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. And there's no easy answer there.
I mean, for some people, forgiving, whether it's themselves or the person who hurt them, it's a big part of healing.
Helps them let go of all that anger, the resentment, the pain they've been carrying.
But for others, forgiving just isn't possible, or they don't even want to.
And that's totally okay, too.
The important thing is to do what feels right for you on your own timeline.
Exactly. Forgiveness is personal. It's not like a rule you gotta follow to heal.
Another big part of healing is getting your sense of self back.
Yeah, narcissistic abuse can really mess with your self-esteem, your confidence, your whole identity.
Like they take a chisel to who you are, and you're left feeling lost and broken.
So rebuilding that sense of self, it's about figuring out who you are again, what you believe in, what makes you happy.
Reconnecting with the things you're passionate about, the things that make you.
And surrounding yourself with people who love and support you, people who see your worth, who celebrate what makes you unique.
And that leads to something else important. Healing isn't just about dealing with the past.
It's also about building a future where that abuse can't happen again.
Learning to see those red flags early on, setting healthy boundaries, choosing people who can empathize, who respect you, who give back as much as they take.
Breaking that cycle of abuse and creating a life where you can be loved, be happy, be your true self.
You are worthy of love and respect. It's so important to remember that.
Absolutely. You deserve kindness and compassion.
And you are strong enough to heal, to build a better future for yourself.
You got this.
Well, this brings us to the end of our deep dive into the world of narcissistic abuse.
It's been a journey.
Yeah, and it's a topic that people don't talk about enough, which can make those who've experienced it feel so alone, so ashamed.
But shining a light on it, that's how we empower people. To recognize the signs, understand the tactics, get the help they need.
Knowledge is power, right? The more we understand about narcissistic abuse, the better we can protect ourselves and each other.
And build a world where everyone feels safe, respected, treated with dignity.
We've reached the end of our deep dive for today, but the conversation can continue.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts, your stories, your insights down in the comments.
Sharing your experiences helps everyone, and it creates a space where people know they're not alone.
And hey, if you found this episode helpful, share it with someone who might need to hear it.
And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into all sorts of interesting, important topics.
We'll be back with more soon.
Until then, take care of yourselves and each other.